You guys just want to wing it? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, it's talking shop more or less. Just think of a couple guys sitting around and we'll ask you some questions. And man, all your technical things that you're writing on Collide are so far over my head. You put a lot on there, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's kind of wide open right now with everything with the vast different levels of expertise and information that people, the different sects of the industry that they're in on there. There's just people from not just from upstream, just drilling, which on LinkedIn, you kind of see a lot of people that are in their little narrow focus. I shouldn't say narrow, but within their focus. But then on Collide, there's a lot more emphasis on the tech side, a lot more emphasis on other aspects that are not just strictly hydrocarbon based, which is
Yes.
an interesting environment to be in.
Thanks for joining Local Energy. This is episode 40. My name's Peter. I'm here with Wade, and we have Chad Koury on with us. Chad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. So, Chad, I met you on Collide, which is a forum for oil and gas professionals, and just noticed a lot of the things that you were posting there. Eventually, we had a couple back and forth DMs, and here we are. So, thanks for taking the time. But tell us, real quick, an overview of yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a petroleum geologist. I have been about 15 years in the oil and gas industry and have mainly worked, I'd say the majority of it in an unconventional space. I have a bachelor's and a master's from West Virginia University. Whenever COVID caused everything to shut down, a lot of people, take on different hobbies. Some people crochet, other people make banana bread. I decided to teach myself conventional reservoirs since the primary, money earner that I had in my business was geosteering. I knew a lot about shale, and I had also geosteered some conventional reservoirs, but I didn't really know a lot about it, the nuances and the intricacies of it. So learning more about that has really expanded my focus, and I've also done my best to do as much as I can to educate myself in all facets of upstream, which, production and land title research and everything else. Even a little bit of completions and some production aspects, actually having hands-on experience in the field. I'm a geologist by education, but I would like to think that I'm a burgeoning oil man, well-rounded kind of guy.
Yeah, awesome.
Whenever you started geosteering and everything, I mean, kind of what's your history with that? How did you get started in it? I mean, is that still something that you focus on? Where are you at currently with that?
Yeah, it's still a big moneymaker, and geosteering is something where if you get in with a couple companies and they will drill, a few wells a year at least, then you can have a good steady stream of revenue from it. It's on the drilling side, so it's big and expensive and complicated, and you're drilling to mobilize the rig and all the ancillary equipment. It's expensive, so you do it on your birthday, on Christmas, on everyone's birthday, really.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're what you can charge for, is a little bit better. But initially started in 2011 in the Appalachian Basin, geosteering, some Marcellus wells, and then I branched out. Back in 2011 to 2014, 15, the price of oil was pretty darn good, so I got a lot of experience in a lot of different basins. Started my business in February of 14, where I was just primarily geosteering, but then started to get into a little bit of exploration of unconventionals in 2018. It's been, like I said, the unconventional geosteering space has been where I got my start, and some well site geology as well. But it's a very in need and all hands on deck moment to where you're 24/7, 365, actually 24/7 for about 3 or 4 days, and then you get a day or two of rest, and you're right back on it.
Mm-hmm.
So where are the basins that are keeping you busiest right now in terms of steering?
In terms of steering, mainly the Appalachian Basin. That's where I have
Okay.
my existing clientele. There's some things here or there I pick up every once in a while, but I have existing experience all over the map in New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia. There's probably a few others I'm missing in there.
Do you have a preferred software package you'd like to use?
I'll say this, and this might be the first hot take of the episode, but I use Stoner Engineering software.
Okay.
I've owned my license for Stoner since before, Rogie was established. And so, as a small business owner, I can't really justify purchasing another license for a program that does
Right.
the same thing. I understand that people enjoy one software over the other, but I will say that Mike Stoner is a very, very, very good person, and he's done very well to me with how his generosity and his guidance on everything, and being available for anything I ever need. So I'm very partial to SES because of not just the software aspect, but also the personability of the people that run that company. They've been very good. Not to say that Star Steer isn't a good program. I just
Right.
I'm loyal.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Throughout the years, I've tried a little bit of everything. Stoner was in there as well. So all the way back to like BHL, LatNav, SES, and Star Steer and all that stuff.
So, newbie question here, but between these programs, are there a ton of differences between them, or programmatically, are they very similar in how they function?
Under the hood, they do the same thing. As I say, if someone gets hung up as to what software they like to use, they're using it as a crutch. If I have an EDR, Payson or Totco or whatever, I can steer well just based on the EDR. I know the data curves that are coming across. I can tell a sundry of different details of the formation and where we're drilling and how we're drilling it based on those data curves. Having software makes it a lot easier to determine and calculate your dip and your position in section and make nice, pretty cross sections. Again, under the hood, it's the same. Some programs will do a point by point calculation for your survey data. Other programs use minimum curvature for the surveys, and then beyond all that, it's just the minutia of how you like your illustrations set up. But by and large, they're all pretty comparable in how their functionality, how they work.
Okay. Good to know. As a small business owner yourself, there was a post that you wrote recently about selling, right? And I think it was specifically about cold calling and kind of business development. And I really appreciated that post because I'm in the sales side, and a lot of times we get sort of a narrow focus on like, oh man, the industry that I'm in is just the hardest when it comes to business development. The reality is it's like, no, it's every small business, medium business is out there trying to get business into the door so that they can keep going and do what they enjoy doing. But my question there, and just this is more hopefully to inspire all the other business owners out there, but is there one thing that maybe no one could prepare you for, as you're going into that self-employment mode?
Well, rejection, I think, is a big one. You go out and you work as hard as you can, and some people already have a person that they prefer to use, and that makes it difficult to try to break into that company or to that potential client. Really just, the discomfort of just being out there without a safety net. Really, you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And in terms of self-employment, I think there's a lot of people that are going to really, really agree with that.
Oh yeah.
If you don't have the ability to put yourself in a position to where you're going to be confused and need to figure stuff out, the solution is not readily available. Yeah, that's what the environment's like. And in terms of cold calling, again, as I humorously pointed out in my post, it was borders on masochism because you have this fear that you're just calling this person you don't know out of the blue, and you're hoping to just say, you don't know me, but I wanted to work for you and you pay me money, which really is what it boils down to. And if like I mentioned, if you just reduce your fear and just say, you know what, I'm just going to hit them hard and fast. If the answer is no, I'm going to go to the next person. That's the best way to do it. So you have to just play the numbers game.
It's interesting, like even building this podcast, and Wade and I have been doing this for a couple of weeks, and we're just starting to get into where we're like, listen, we like talking to each other, but we want to start interviewing more people. And there's been interest, but it's funny because I'm even calling people and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. You've got, great topics, great conversations. Would you like to come and chat with us? And, I've maybe made 5 or 6 of those phone calls, which is not the volume that's required to, keep a steady stream. But it's funny, people are like, I'm just not going to get back to you, or I'm not interested, or no, like you're not big enough. Like I get it. Like we only have, maybe 4,000 views on a weekly basis, but it's like, I feel like we're getting there, right? I mean, from where we were, Wade and I were like, we're going to hang this up like 2 weeks in because it wasn't, and then all of a sudden something hit and I was like, that's kind of fun. That was cool. Yeah. But rejection is a huge part of it. So I guess, running a full podcast could be a full-time thing, just like anything else. So, I'm still going to keep my day job, but it's good to know. And wait, I mean, just kind of comparing like your background to what Chad's doing now. I mean, Chad, are you still doing geosteering? Is that like, I guess, if you were going to put a label on it, or are you doing more than just geosteering?
It's really all things geology. Geosteering, like I said, it's still a big cash cow for me. And like I said, it's 24/7 and you're on it the whole time, which again commands a higher price. But there's other aspects where I'm, prospecting and building leads for places to drill and doing stuff like that, working with a number of different people on those projects. And just doing some geology background, doing subsurface mapping with production, historical events in terms of what happened, why were these wells permitted when they were, why were these wells not drilled, why were these wells dry holes, these wells produced this much, production change. There's always a story. And I think that most of the time, a person in my position, more than not, is a storyteller as opposed to kind of an analyst, to where you have to understand that things got to where they are because of how they unfolded. And a geologist is just a storyteller with a much, much, much longer story, much older story.
A lot of the best kind of geology pre-spuds and all that I've ever seen really lay down the foundation for like how this was created. I mean, talking about depositional environment or, why it's lenticular or all these different things. One of the challenges, I don't have tons of steering experience up in Appalachia and the Marcellus. We drilled a number of wells up there, but one of the things that stood out to me, number one, it drilled super fast. So whenever you're talking about 2 or 3 days of being on, I can definitely relate to that. But number two, it seemed really, in terms of subsurface, very challenging just from bed dip and faulting perspective. Is that pretty widespread up there, or was that maybe, did I just draw an unlucky straw with steering Frank Arco where they were, or what?
Well, it all depends on where you're at in the basin, and the history of how the basin developed and how you had different orogenic events where you had mountain building episodes and just the way that the plate tectonics put the North American plate into a position to have collisions and extensions and everything like that. Again, it's a long story that has resulted in this huge basin having so many different, not only do you have the stratigraphic, let's just speaking in terms of Marcellus, not only do you have the stratigraphic differences from point to point in the basin, but roughly you go south and or east, you get into more complex structure, and the complex structure in the Marcellus will have certain type of, the folds will follow a certain type of geometric pattern, and formation dips get to be incredibly steep, and it's just how it happened, to where the fairway and the pipeline and everything at the surface happens to be right above some very complicated geology sometimes. And so it's just, you have plenty of places where the geology is perfectly flat and easy, but again, that's further to the west. And if you're in northern Pennsylvania, it's going to be somewhat complicated. And as you go south, it gets more complicated. If you're in western Pennsylvania, as you go to the southeast, it gets complicated. In West Virginia, as you go to the southeast, it gets complicated. Structurally, everything in Ohio is not difficult. It's very flat, very easy in a relative sense.
Right. I got you. Do they have multiple targets? I mean, I know, North Dakota, you got Bakken, Three Forks, you've got, Oklahoma, some of these wells or some of these sections have half a dozen targets in them. Marcellus is really the main that I've ever heard from kind of up there in Appalachia. Are there other targets that people are going after now?
Yeah, for a while now, there's another zone that is above the Marcellus called, it depends on who you ask, but it's called the Burkett. I call it the Burkett. People call it the Geneseo. It just depends. It's very similar in its profile, its mineralogy, basically everything. Age, mineralogy, composition, fracture matrix, everything. It's essentially the Marcellus's little brother. And you see a lot of companies that are successfully developing it around the basin. And then you also see some companies that are able to, in the thinner area where the Marcellus is thinner but very dense and rich, or I should say its richness is dense. They are drilling a Marcellus well and they're fracking up into the Burkett as well. Their economics, or I should say their returns on these wells are so good that there's no way they aren't fracking and producing the Burkett along with the Marcellus. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal on that. But yeah, the Marcellus obviously is the big one, and the Point Pleasant in western Ohio, western Pennsylvania into Ohio, western Pennsylvania, western West Virginia, eastern Ohio. The Point Pleasant is very big. And then there's the Burkett, then there's a handful of other zones. A lot of people have dabbled in the lower Huron. And then outside of the basin itself, outside of the core of the basin, there's a lot of other zones that exist. If you get down into Kentucky, you get down into Virginia, there's other horizontally drillable zones down there. In terms of the area where you already have a great deal of widespread development, there might be a few shallower Pennsylvanian and Mississippian aged unconventional conventional sands that you could drill that have been drilled horizontally with some success, but it all gets overshadowed by the Marcellus.
Okay. Gotcha. How big of a vertical separation are you talking about between the Marcellus and what was the name of that? I don't want to call it secondaries.
The Burkett. It depends, again, where you're at. If you're further west in the basin, it may be 100 feet. If you're further east in the basin, it may be 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you look up at an illustration of the Acadian clastic wedge, Cadin, clastic wedge, you can see that the base, it's a great illustration that shows how you have the basin as it's formed from the initial collision of the two proto-continents whose names escape me. I don't want to say, I think one was Rhodesia. Anyway,
okay.
You have the development of the basin. So you have this big open area that all the sediment starts to flow into. So it all starts to deposit into the basin, and then it continues to deposit after the Appalachian Mountains are formed, and you have this sink, this intercontinental seaway. And so the wedge itself is a physical wedge where it's thinner in Ohio, and then it deepens as you go east. And you have something called the Cincinnati Arch, which is where it's kind of that hinge point. And if you continue to go west, you get into the Illinois Basin, the Michigan Basin, to where, those are similar but different. So they're kind of like the cousins of the Appalachian Basin.
You kind of hit on a question that I've always had. So, why can't we get geologists to all use the same nomenclature for these zones? One of the very first things, when I was at Baker and we're working with different operators, the number one thing we had to do before we started working with anybody was get on the same page as far as, okay, what do you call this zone? What do you call this? What do you call this? Everybody calls it something different. In Oklahoma, we've got the Mist, the Merrimack, the Sycamore. Like, those are all talking about essentially the same zones. Yeah. Maybe in a little different part of the state, but they're all the same zones.
You're right. That's been, I feel like what could be like my work of passion could be finding a way to standardize everything. And then we can have one big vote and be done with it. It's like, okay, everybody, what do you call the formation that is between this and this? And they just put a picture of a log on there, and then everyone's going to throw in their idea, and it's like, all in favor of this. I feel like that's got to be what happens. You're right. It's hilarious. And the one thing I could think of is the larger multinational corporations that I've seen operate in the basin will usually use academic terminology, nomenclatures. They're always from like academic papers. For example, like what we call the lower Marcellus, which is the hottest of the hot Marcellus right above the Onondaga limestone. I call it the lower Marcellus. A lot of people academically call it the Union Springs. And I assume that there's a town in New York State called Union Springs, but that's what that is. And so there's all sorts of different little pieces of the Marcellus that they've broken down into different names in that regard. But then you get, I think the vast majority of people are just going to call it lower Marcellus, but you still see some that still do. So, but you're right. One, if you look in the 1980s, one geologist's fourth sand is another geologist's fifth sand. And can you really know,
Well, it was always crazy. Like, I worked at Lynn Energy back, 2010 through 2018. And like, heaven help you if you actually open up like Petro and you're looking at like everybody's top picks, and it's like 5 different people picking essentially the same top, and there's 3 different names between those 5 picks, and it's just, man, it is it's a challenge. But all right,
I mean, as
if you ever get started on a passion project, let me know. I'll help you try and come to a consensus.
We'll spread the word for you. If nothing else. I'm surprised the internet hasn't like helped standardize things just by people looking things up, and like even going now into the next phase of the internet with AI. It's be interesting to see as all these documents and reports get consolidated. I wonder if these LLMs are going to get confused on what they're looking at, or if they're eventually going to just draw conclusions and say it's this area. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting about that is there's a website you can go to. It's the USGS GeoLexicon, and you
Mhm.
can, if you want to know more about a specific zone, you can type it in, and it'll tell you, okay, this zone is present here, here, and here, and it's a good way to have a better understanding of just a very general sense of what it is. So if I'm looking at a completion report and I see a name of a zone I haven't seen before, I look it up, and maybe
Yeah.
somewhere at some point in time, someone referenced that zone in regards to another zone, and then I can reference it stratigraphically and try to pinpoint what it actually is. But then you get into the point where people will just spell it differently, or they will misspell it, and then you get into that.
Right.
So I wonder if, with artificial intelligence going through the internet and gathering all of this information, if that's going to get 97% of it, just to throw it out there. And then that
Yeah.
last 3% is going to be someone who knows the area with domain knowledge of
Hmm.
say, whatever basin you're in, and to say,
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I understand that this actually is this, and now I'm going to put all these in this bucket. So it could be one of those things where it does help streamline, but to ultimately get 100% of it, there's no substitute for the human mind on that one.
Yeah.
And they're never going to solve for our stubbornness either. So
No.
I've been calling it this way for 20 years. Like, who's going to tell me that I've got to change it now?
Right, right. Yeah. I remember a funny anecdote that I always cite is that when I was a little kid, I asked my dad, Abraham Lincoln, what number president was he? And I think he made a mistake. He said he was the 15th president. Well, he's the 16th president. But even to this day, I'm still like, no, Dad said he was number 15. He's number 15. So I still have a hard time because I think that,
Right.
that could be the same thing. There could be some person out there who says, I love drilling Union Springs. And everyone says, well, what's that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Have you always been interested in drilling in oil and gas and all this stuff, or was this something you found, maybe in college or something later?
I graduated in December of 2010, and obviously oil and gas drilling was very big then. It was very easy to get a job that utilized my degree. It's funny because I had another post on Collide where I was talking about the advice I give people during the quarter life crisis, and they if you can't find a job that you want, find something relevant. But I was very lucky that I had a degree in geology, and I found a job that required a degree in geology. And I think that's how it started. And from there, I loved it. I love the fact that oil and gas is a true meritocracy. Everyone relies on it's performance based, it's performance driven. You either deliver or you don't. And there's a lot of benefit. There's huge sums of money to be made. It's an easy industry that you can romanticize about because huge fortunes can be made, and it's very hard work. And if you're willing to do the work that other people aren't willing to do, you're going to get further. But it also, is one of those things where it's enjoyable to romanticize about the destination while you're on the journey, but it's a heck of a lot more fun to romanticize about the journey when you're there at the destination.
Yeah. I like that.
It's funny you talk about romanticizing it. Have you guys seen the new, it's like a Jerry Jones Dallas Cowboys documentary on Netflix?
I haven't seen it. I just canceled my Netflix subscription.
If you go and just watch the trailer, the preview for it.
Yeah.
And really all it is about 2 minutes of Jerry Jones talking about him putting all his money in on this one well.
Mm.
And he talks about he talks about just spewing like oil and screaming at you and all this different stuff. And I think he said he made something like $100 million off of that one well. And he was like, he used that money. He knew exactly what he was going to do with it. He used that money to go buy the Dallas Cowboys. And the moment that I saw that, I was just hooked. I was like, all right, I've got to watch this. Plus I hated the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s. I was a 49ers fan with Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Steve Young. But at the same time, like you said, you think about oil and gas, the books that have been written or the movies that have been made, everything from, like There Will Be Blood to this new Jerry Jones documentary. It's, just the kind of the lore of wildcatting and doing all that stuff's really exciting.
It is. It definitely hooks you. And one thing I strongly urge young people to do that want to get into the industry is another little tidbit I give quarter life crisis kids is listen to old people tell stories, because old people have lived and learned and failed and recovered, and they are going to have this information that you don't have, so you can learn from their mistakes without having to go through it. You know, listening to an old oil man tell stories about wells he's drilled whenever you love it, it's the most fascinating thing. It's the most fascinating thing. Talking about, you know, you drilled, a good friend of mine was drilling Chapel wells in the late 90s, mid 90s. And these are some major, huge Mondo wells. Like one well makes over 1 million barrels. And he was telling me how he was there in he was a well site geologist, mud logger, and he was in his mobile shack. And he said, you know what? We're in the formation. We haven't seen a show yet. I guarantee you, I go lay down in my bed, we're going to see something. He said, I laid down for 2 minutes and then boom, it came. And so it's just like little anecdotes like that, you know, if you take it all together and you piece them all together, you could have an incredible story and sell the movie rights, make some money.
Totally. Yeah. I like that. Chad, I did have a question for you that I was kind of thinking about, and couldn't really figure out how to ask it. So I'm just going to sort of bang around it. But if you could uninvent one thing in the oil and gas industry and take it away, what would that be?
That is a very, very good question. I don't think anyone's. That's
a great question.
And if there's nothing for it, then it's like then you guys are in the right industry, because there's plenty of things in my world that I would delete.
Are you talking about now? Is this constrained to a physical item that has been invented? There's a patent for
it. Could be.
Or
it could be anything. It could
or
be
like
anything.
A method of thinking or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, really, anything about the oil and gas industry that you would uninvent or just delete entirely and move on from, if you could.
I would like, this is more of kind of like an attitude thing, but I would like to try to see you know, when you're fishing and you see a ripple and you cast at the ripple, that fish is gone. He's over there now. A lot of people, a lot of companies just chase the latest thing. And I feel like if people just, held fast to their course of action and remember that a man that chases 2 rabbits will catch neither. So, don't follow trends. I wish we didn't have so many trend followers. I feel like people get too caught up in these fashions. But, that's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah. Day to day, it can definitely change on our part. There's headaches that you run across every day. But I think kind of going back to what Chad said a little bit earlier, oil and gas is a sink or swim kind of a deal. And so I think if a technology or something kind of hits and it doesn't help, it doesn't make more efficient or more economic, a lot of the times over time it's found out and it disappears. And we've seen a lot of things come and go throughout. And mine's a shorter career. I've been doing this for 20 years now, but there are tons and tons of technologies that have hit the market but have just disappeared. And it's because it was either proven false or it was snake oil or it just didn't provide what it said it would,
I appreciate the pointing out the fact that a lot of what I post is very deep and philosophical, because I do try to go that route. In that regard, going back to fashion, I would say that philosophies themselves have been weeded out to where I can recall that different fashions existed where it was, in 2013, 2012, people were like, we have to hit a mile a day. We have to hit a mile a day. And then in 2014, 15, 16, when that first crash of oil came, everyone said, we have to steer in the tightest zone. We have to. If we're not in this zone, we're 1 foot above it, everything's shot. And it was like, no, not really. Because you're going to pump thousands of sacks of sand under thousands of pounds of pressure with thousands of barrels of water. It's not going to make a difference. So, and then you get into the conversation of proppant loading. What's ideal? Well, that depends. It depends on where you're at. Then you get into spacing. Well, what's the best spacing? It depends where you're at. So a lot of these issues, a lot of these questions you'll never have a singular answer to them because they're all constrained by the underlying geology, and that changes from place to place. So I think that, taking everything on a case-by-case basis is probably the best course of action there. But good question. And I think it's something that I think as you move forward, I think maybe it's going to be a thing where it's like we're in the middle of it and we're thinking, man, I wish we could uninvent this thing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving forward.
There was one other, I have a couple others, and obviously, let us know on your time. We can edit anything out that I should have mentioned that at the beginning too. Yeah. We can cut things out if you don't like what you said.
Yeah, it's not organic. You should put this into the episode. that explanation.
Yeah,
No need to
no,
cut it out.
we will. Do you think that we'll ever completely run out of oil, or is it just being regenerated below the surface all the time?
Sorry to be cliche, but when I hear this argument, I think to myself, we didn't exit the Stone Age because we ran out of stones.
Right.
Eventually, something better is going to come along, and it will uplift us to the Bronze Age or whatever it was. So we are right now in the era of hydrocarbon fuels, and there's technology that's coming out that is proving to be, at least better than it was before. We'll just say that. Eventually, maybe we will. We still need lubricant. We still need hydrocarbon-based lubricants. So even if we are all completely and totally like renewable energy, we still need something to reduce friction in all these devices, which, of course you can farm crops that could let you do that. You can have any sort of other, plant-based stuff that oils or what have you. And then, so are we ever going to run out of it? Would say no. I think we're going to transition to something else before we do. But when is that going to happen? I couldn't tell you. So, we will need oil. We will need gas for a very, very long time. And we're going to need oil for a very long time and gas for a very, very, very long time. Because it's so cheap. It's so easy to get. It's so readily available. The infrastructure's in place. It's very modern. And it's just easy. It's the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And I love that answer in teaching my own kids. So I have I have young kids and teaching them about energy, where energy comes from, how we get it, not taking it for granted, like understanding really like the work that's involved to produce it. Because I think we're going into a more, we're in an energy dependent world already, but our futures, we're tying more and more to it also, I think, as we continue going. So what are some ways that you might, I think, educate even younger kids about energy? Anything creative or in your own life that you might consider?
I have this, I ended up at one point in time having a conversation with the U.S. Senator from my state about this, and he asked me, he's like, what could we tell people that's going to bring them over to our side to let them know that oil and gas is not evil and everything like that, and why we absolutely need it? And I said if people aren't going to want to be convinced, they're not going to be convinced. So I don't think we need to convince people to believe in the good of hydrocarbon fuels. What I think we need people to do is understand that not everything is as they would assume it to be at face value whenever they see it on social media or whatever. We really are like in this, the people that are so vehemently against things know very little about it. And I would give credit to people that are against it if they were to actually know the fine-grained, minute details of how it's done. Because at least then I could say, I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to learn about this, what it is, how it is, and you still disagree with it. I would have immense respect for that person for going through that process. So I would just say, to anyone and everyone, don't get caught up in the hype of being a serial against it kind of person, and do your homework and do your research. And then you can go on to say, like, everything you're wearing is made out of hydrocarbons, and if it's not, it got to market through hydrocarbons. So deal with it. Have an open mind. That's all.
I like that. Wade, any questions that you're stewing on?
In terms of, like, right now, in terms of your workload and everything, how much would you say is geosteering versus maybe like contract geology work? And over the years, I know you said post-COVID, like, have you seen that kind of change since then? Has it kind of ebbed and flowed, or?
I would say over the past maybe 7 or 8 years that, 7 or 8 years ago, it was 100% geosteering, and then it slowly started to progress and shift to the point where it's about 50-50 now.
Okay.
So it's where, if a rig is turning to the right, I'm not making money. Well, now it's, I'm able to do a few other projects here and there to keep revenue flowing. So it was definitely done so in order to maintain cash flow, because like I said, when rig counts drop, then you're kind of in a hard spot there, because if your clients aren't drilling, you're not making money.
Right. Yeah, I feel that one.
Yep.
That one hits very close to home.
Yep.
As far as who you're working for, also, what does that look like? Not necessarily specific operators.
Yep.
You've got public coast, private coast, maybe investment groups, some things like that. Where is that kind of trending to right now for you?
I fit in mainly at the old terminology would be mom and pops, but really it's smaller, but really not even mom and pops.
Independence.
It's smaller independent, smaller companies that are PE backed that will drill a pad or two a year, but not keep a rig running continually. That has been my bread and butter since the beginning. Actually, since it's word of mouth too, trying to get myself out there, and colleagues have satisfied horizontally, but they're not big enough to where they have someone in house for it. So it's
Right.
a small lens of companies that exist there, and of course with current commodity prices, they're not drilling quite as much. But I did finish a 7-well Marcellus project a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very intense month and a half of drilling, where that was my life. So
Right.
you do what you do. You do what you do.
Yeah.
Yep. So as far as activity and things like that, I mean, in Oklahoma right now, I think we've seen a transition from, we still got the big publics and all that, but it seems like there's a lot more companies coming in here with, like you're saying, some private equity money and not wanting to spin up entire teams. I mean, it felt like in the early, 2012 to 2014, that was all it was like, you've got a team and then they look for an asset instead of, looking for an asset. I'm sorry, instead of putting together a team after they've kind of got the asset. So are you seeing that up there kind of in the Northeast as well?
As I stated earlier, Northeast has really been delineated pretty well. Everything's been cut up and divided. You have the big companies that come in, gobble something up for a specific piece, and then they take everything else and they just kind of sell it. Well, the money is made in those margins. And yes, you have companies like EQT that are massive, but they are, there's plenty of stuff that is in their inventory that they're never going to drill, but could be drilled economically. And with the different companies you see up here in the Northeast, the one that comes to mind that is the most is a big, gotta give big kudos to them, is Infinity. And they're a local Morgantown, West Virginia company where I live, and they identified certain things with certain acreage where they had sharp people who were scrappy, and they saw that there was an asset out there that had huge potential and huge promise that other companies just kind of cast aside, and they jumped on it. And they're having huge. So like I said, there is absolutely room to make money in the margins, but the problem is trying to get yourself into this area, which again, dry gas, you need a pipeline. It's difficult in that regard. Your ability to try to muscle yourself in here is difficult. And again, in the conventional reservoir space in this area in terms of drilling, I mean, it's a very big gas area, so you're not going to find a conventional gas prospect that's going to be economical because Marcellus has suppressed prices so hard. And there are some oil prospects in the basin as well, but again, it's just so difficult to get equipment and material because the prices have been jacked up by the Marcellus that really it's a pure play basin almost to this degree.
I love to hear that there's still operators out there. Not necessarily working the fringes, but finding stuff that a lot of the other people aren't seeing and making it work. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Again, being in the mix physically and educationally and professionally, there's plenty of acreage in the Marcellus that is very good, that has infrastructure in place. That is out there to be taken over. But again, if it's not in the dead center of the fairway, a lot of these PE firms don't really want to throw money at it. You're kind of trying to explain, you're trying to be a geologist and tell a story to somebody that doesn't quite understand geology. So, it's hard.
Right.
It's hard to convey that sense.
When you're pulling these long projects, I'm sure you're staying working some pretty long hours, but are you a coffee guy or more? And
I've gone through phases. I would say right now I have this like small espresso maker, and so I take the little thing and I pack it full of espresso and tamp it down, drizzle a little more on there and tamp it down.
Fancy.
Make myself a triple shot at a time.
Oh, wow.
And I'll have like 3 or 4 of those a day. But I just feel like after a while, just like the thought of it, like energy drinks just have so high in sugar that it's just kind of like you drink them and you feel like it slows you down almost. But I would say it's the bean for me.
Okay. Good to
coffee
know.
and all
Good
the
to know.
derivatives.
I had to ask because I'm like, man, if you're working late, long hours like that, and wait, I've actually never asked you. I know you have to do some late night stuff too, but sometimes it's hard to snap out of it. So
It's coffee all day, every day.
Chad, we'll cut it off here. We're 45 minutes in, man. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
Yeah. Well, have me back on.
Yeah, we will. Tell our listeners where they can find you, and I know we can connect you on Collide.
I'm on LinkedIn also. I do enjoy engaging with people on there, and on Collide, it's much more people that are all in the same relative market. But on LinkedIn, there's a lot more wide open conversations that happen, and they're two different environments that are both good, individually. And if anyone is, interested in talking to me, they can go to my website or just hit me up on LinkedIn. Really, is the easiest thing. And, I'm always willing to talk to anybody about anything. I've got ideas. I know people have ideas, and, the modern oil field is this right here. Because as I've said, I've met in person maybe 1% of all the individuals I've ever encountered in my professional career. Now, that's everything from an MWD that I worked on one well with, all the way to clients I've had for 10 years. I've, maybe in person, face to face, shook their hand, 1%. And so this right here, we're doing, this is kind of the way of the future. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to people that want to reach out and engage and have conversations. LinkedIn's been huge for that, and just general modern technology. So hit me up and let's talk.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate you coming on with us and talking. Wade, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.
Right.
Hey, thank you. Thank you guys very much. Have a great one.
Thanks, guys.